Greetings, travelers. I love Final Fantasy XIV. It's a great game. Of course I like the game. I don't put thousands of hours into something out of spite, otherwise I'd still be working as a software engineer. Like all players, I have a shrine dedicated to Naoki Yoshida, behind all my Nickel Power merch, where I sacrifice some goats once in a while to keep the game alive. I also say a prayer about how great the game is before I go to bed. With all of that in mind, it can always be better. I know that's hard for some people to believe, but nothing is ever perfect. I haven't said anything controversial just yet, but strap in, because some of us need to have a little talk. Everyone that plays this game has different values. People can like different aspects of the game. It is not fun when people don't get the stuff that they care about. For example, I feel bad for Ultimate Raiders, not because I play that content, but because I have this little thing called empathy. I know, right? Wild. At the same time, I am happy for everyone that's excited about Bunny Boys, even though I will clearly never play any other race in this game. Just because a feature was added doesn't mean that something else was cut out, although it can certainly have that appearance, which is why I get that some Ultimate Raiders have expressed a little bit of negativity. But Jesus Christ, how does everyone manage to sound like toddlers competing for parental affection when talking about this game? I know people can't ever possibly reach my level of emotional maturity, but you can certainly try. It is okay to be upset at features not being added to the game, like bunny hats. You are allowed to want the development team to do more, because that's how the game improves. Something version 1.0. Now that we all have this fundamental understanding, allow me to complain about the game, because I'm here to taper some expectations of people playing Final Fantasy XIV for the first time. A Realm Reborn fucking sucks. Some people like it. Some people also like cock and ball torture. It's not for everyone, and I think it's real good that I see more people actively shitting on A Realm Reborn. It's thanks to our collective efforts that we have lowered everyone's expectations so much that I see some delusional people say that they actually enjoyed A Realm Reborn and it wasn't as bad as it was made out to be. That's right, it's actually worse than that. Nowadays, it's slow and boring story with slow and boring abilities, with slow and boring characters, and slow and boring world building, I guess? If I see one more person say that it's okay until all the patches, let me just tell you something. That's like saying an anime series is good if half the episodes are alright and the other half are dog shit. Except you are physically restricted from watching the better parts without at least pretending to watch the boring ones. You don't get to opt out of the garbage patches. You have to strap in and be ready to suffer. You are still allowed to like A Realm Reborn, but for myself, I quit the game when A Realm Reborn was the only thing. Not just because of how god-awful at the game I was, but because of how much I truly despise the game. And that's okay too. Even if you hate A Realm Reborn as much as me, there are plenty of things that I have enjoyed in my life where I hated the first part of it and enjoyed everything else, such as JoJo Part 1 and Re:Zero Season 1. For those who have a bad time at first, you can certainly enjoy the rest of it, but most people's playthroughs die in A Realm Reborn for a reason. At the same time, there are people who don't enjoy the story at all in Final Fantasy XIV and still enjoy the rest of the game. Just because you think that story is the only reason to play the game doesn't mean that everyone else shares that opinion. And while I definitely like Heaven's Word, parts of Stormblood, and most of Shadowbringers, that doesn't mean that everyone has that same opinion. Even though it is definitely a big focus of the development when they make the game. I don't really enjoy pushing people away from the community simply because they don't enjoy the story. While on the topic, the Final Fantasy XIV community is not the best thing in the universe, and I hate it when people make it out to be more amazing than it is. Granted, it's pretty good when it wants to be, but there is some shit there too. I come from the wholesome cesspool that is League of Legends, and trust me, I could walk into a vat of radioactive material and probably come out the other side less toxic than the League of Legends community. I didn't have a good time there, and to be clear, I was also toxic as fuck when I played that game. I assure you that I was as bad, if not worse, than most League of Legends players. With that being said, I've had pretty good experiences in Final Fantasy XIV by comparison. but I think almost anything would be better than what I came from. You can absolutely still find people in Final Fantasy XIV who will flame the fuck out of you for messing up mechanics. It's called Ether Party Finder. You can also find people who will refuse to do any DPS and throw a hissy fit if you so much as imply they could toss one, maybe even two AoEs in a trash pull just for fun. Both sides of the toxic spectrum exist, but you don't see them super often. You will usually find people so nice it comes off as patronizing, despite people being genuine. I will say my one little thing here though. It doesn't take that much effort to learn your job to the point where you know what you're supposed to do and just try to execute that. Even if you aren't 100% perfect, just trying is okay. I do think it's toxic to not play your job properly in the slightest, because it's like being on a cycling team and not knowing how to ride a bike. There is a big fucking difference between trying to be a professional and not even knowing where the pedals are. If you choose a garbage playstyle, you are a problem. If you flame the shit out of people instead of trying to be nice when giving them advice, you are also a problem. Most people in Final Fantasy XIV will call out toxic individuals who are vocal about it, but it's not like you will never encounter them. It is still miles better than any other community I have been a part of, and I have met some amazing people here. I've also just met some not so friendly people too. Now that I'm sure that every single person has successfully unsubscribed to me after listening to my inane complaints, the one thing I find strangest about the 14 community that I haven't really experienced anywhere else is the dedicated, pridefully ignorant population that enjoys jerking themselves off to how much they don't care about playing the game in a coherent manner. It does feel like there is a cult that believes if you take the game seriously, you're automatically toxic, and if you play the game casually, you're automatically nice. No. It is completely independent of how serious you are for how toxic you are in-game. If you tell someone to die because they messed up, that's not okay. If you tell someone to die because they asked you to use AoE skills in trash packs, that's not okay either. None of this is rocket science. It's not difficult to understand. You've probably played with hundreds of hardcore players and never even realized it because of how much they don't care about your gameplay. But the thing that Final Fantasy XIV has managed to do is that the game masters in this game will literally ban you for implying that people should play better if you tell that to their face. And this is why a lot of people will come to me after watching something like my ninja guide and say, I can't believe I used Doton on single target for so long. Why didn't anyone tell me that it was bad? And that's pretty easy. If someone told you that unprompted and you got mad and decided to report them, they could get in trouble and potentially banned. Thanks to the game having a 3-strike policy and the fact that those strikes never go away. The answer is that it is never worth the effort to try to help people because you leverage all the risk and there is no reward. Obviously, everything that people tell you in this game might not be entirely correct in the first place, but if someone points out something that you're doing as incorrect when it comes to damage skills, you probably want to look at some online resources to verify if what they say is true or not. Just to make this point clear, no one is going to correct you, hardly ever, if at all in this game. You have to go outside of it to figure out what an actual damage rotation looks like because the game doesn't tell you and the people don't tell you. Now, I have talked about some of these topics a little bit in the past, so why do I make this video? Because I'm doing some fluff content while I'm working on other stuff, and also because I want Final Fantasy XIV to be the best game it can be. Mentorship, bad. But it's not just me making fun of some stupid stuff. It's fine for people to express their problems with the game. This development team and Yoshi P himself are very in tune with the player base and try to meet as many demands as possible. At the same time, they understand that they cannot possibly please every single player. While you and I will probably not agree with every change that is made, I think it is nice that we can at least understand why the dev team does what they do. I get annoyed when people use this stupid, shitty logic of WoW bad, WoW players complain, therefore if Final Fantasy XIV players complain, then Final Fantasy XIV will be bad. Shut the fuck up. I have never even played World of Warcraft. Also, while I'm here, you don't have to agree with everything that I say, even though I'm right. People don't always have to agree to be able to see eye to eye. Hardcore players have the content they want, and they are allowed to ask for it, as well as express their anger when they didn't get what they were promised. Casual players also have the content that they want, and they are allowed to ask for it as well, and express anger if they didn't get what they were promised. Most hardcore players know they are not the ones who are catered towards the most in this game, but man, I really started to get upset when people were being told they were not allowed to be upset when the dev team also clearly was not happy when they announced Ultimate was delayed till the next expansion. I'm sure there are plenty of people who would get upset if female Hrothgar ends up getting delayed beyond an actual deadline, and I will understand that sentiment as well. Everyone is in this game together. Every single one of us, the whole hierarchy from the people who ERP in public to the people who ERP in private, and everyone in between. Despite what people might say, there is not a single thing that unites the entire player base other than the game Final Fantasy XIV. In other words, stop asking to remove positionals on melees and making the normal mode any easier than it already is. I will carry your bitch ass through normal mode if I have to, but it's also not that difficult. I think the game is in a good spot where jobs are not super hard to pick up but still have room for skill expression. And on a final note, I don't think that we need to be overly negative, but I do think this community needs a healthier amount of pessimism, as well as a little less worship for Yoshi P and the dev team. Maybe only sacrifice one goat to your shrine instead of 3 a week. Now let's get out there and continue to complain about normal content being too hard anyways.